Utah, and Seattle, and talk about their craft and their work. We hope you discover and support these great artisans. A little about TasteTV. TasteTV is an international media company based in San Francisco and founded in 2005. TasteTV produces television programs, online videos, product reviews, award competitions, live tasting events, especially for chocolate and wine, and books. Several books have been published on chocolate, such as the Chocolatiers Primer, French Chocolate, and the Official Chocolate Journal. TasteTV's live chocolate events are called chocolate salons and include a number of artisan chocolatiers, panelists, and experts who come together to enjoy great chocolate. Our first is Erin Andrews from Indi Chocolate. Erin has over a dozen years of bean-to-bar chocolate making experience, which began when she started her first bean-to-bar chocolate company in Belize. 2 years later, she started Indi Chocolate in Seattle and began working to improve the machines for chocolate making. She speaks around the world. Ben Glass, The Good Chocolate Company. Ben is the co-founder, CEO, and chocolate maker at The Good Chocolate, a zero-sugar bean-to-bar chocolate maker in San Francisco. Ben is an entrepreneur with 20 years of business experience, and when he discovered how much healthier he became after eliminating sugar from his diet, he started the company. Art Pollard of Amano Artisan Chocolate, which has won many awards from the Chocolate Salon. It's an American bean-to-bar chocolate company based in Orem, Utah. The chocolate bars are made in small batches on vintage equipment, which allows the artisan chocolate maker to control and observe flavor development during each stage of manufacture. Amano's chocolate making has evolved from Italian and French confectionery techniques and uses a high percentage of cocoa. And our moderator today is Barbie Van Horn from Finding Fine Chocolate. Barbie is a chocolate enthusiast and blogger speaking and writing about craft chocolate origin, cacao farmers, chocolate makers, and palate training. She holds a Level 2 certificate from the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting and has been an invigilator for these courses.
Thank you. I want to welcome everyone here today, especially the bean-to-bar chocolate makers who have taken a little bit of time away from making bean-to-bar chocolate to talk to us. So to the chocolate makers, tell us a little bit about your business and a little bit about your background.
I'll start.
Erin, you want to start? Yeah, there you go.
I've always been a chocolate lover, but my real professional journey started 12 years, a little over 12 years ago now, on a trip to Belize, on a chocolate making trip to Belize. And that's when I started my first company in Belize, working with Mayan farmers there. And that's where I really learned what my passion is working directly with farmers, sourcing and making bean-to-bar chocolate. So started that in 2008. And then started my next company, Indi Chocolate, in Seattle, and we're in the iconic Pike Place Market in Seattle. We do bean-to-bar chocolate. We have a tea line, a spice rub line, and a mixology line, all with cacao. And then we have with cocoa butter, a cocoa butter-based body care line as well. So we do like to surprise people with new ways to fall in love with cacao and chocolate.
Thank you, Erin. Ben?
Thank you for having me. Good to see everyone. So I got into making bean-to-bar chocolate about 6 years ago when I was trying to solve a problem I was having with sugar. I was basically drinking too much sugar, and it was causing gum pain, weight gain, and cavities over the age of 40, which was very embarrassing. And I went on a mission to try to figure out how to stop all these health problems that started accumulating. And my dentist encouraged me to get off of sugar. So I got off of went on an elimination diet and was just amazed at how quickly my teeth health bounced back. I lost like 10 pounds just without going to any more trips to the gym. And I just felt a lot more energetic, and I started doing a lot of research, and I saw how much overconsumption of sugar plays a pretty outsized role in a lot of health problems. And that inspired me to try to, find some alternatives. Some of the sweeteners that we use at the Good Chocolate are all available from fruits and vegetables in Mother Nature. One of them, erythritol, I started using in my coffee, and I just, felt really passionate that we, the market needs alternatives. People need to have a choice. Doesn't mean that chocolate with sugar is bad. I still eat chocolate with sugar. I love it, but it's really nice to have a choice and to be able to enjoy a sweet treat that doesn't have some other bad side effects when over consumed. So that's, I just started making chocolate in my home kitchen in San Francisco. About 3 years ago, we had enough demand from customers and everybody that we went into our own factory just south of the Mission Market in the city. And we've got a great team and we're very mission focused, and it's been a great ride so far, and we're looking forward to making more delicious zero sugar chocolate.
Thank you, Ben. Art, Art, what are you doing there, Art?
I'm actually at the factory. I'm actually in the process of fixing machines.
Yeah, it looked like you were fixing something.
Yeah.
So tell us, Art, tell us a little bit about your business and about your background, and a little bit about what you're doing today.
Yeah. So, well, my background is more or less physics. And so when I was in college, I was working for the physics department at BYU. And my job was designing and building machines. And one day I'm eating this German chocolate bar, and everybody says, and I say, it'd be really cool to make my own chocolate. And all my coworkers are saying, oh, no, you can't do it. It's too difficult. And that got my attention because I'm was always a diehard foodie, and I love a challenge. And so my whole life's been about, projects and figuring things out. So I asked them, I said, why is it too difficult? And I said, well, there's all these trade secrets. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool. That's a research project. And I said, what else? And they said, well, you need millions of dollars of machinery. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, because that's what I've been building, right? So
Okay.
I was working on a few nuclear fusion projects, among other things. And then I said, what else? And they're like, well, it's really hard to get good quality cocoa beans. And I'm like, oh, so that's what you use? You use cocoa beans? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, where do you get those? Because this was back in '94 or so. And nobody really, chocolate at that point was this magical ingredient that just magically appeared from a factory. It didn't actually come from somewhere, it came from Hershey's or something, And I said, well, where do you get cocoa beans? They're like, well, Central and South America. And I'm thinking to myself, screw it, I'll just go get my own. And then we started a software company, my business partner and I, and we wrote search engine technology. So some of the top guys at Google are like really good friends of mine. And then we were looking for something to do outside of search technologies, and I've been making chocolate for about 10 years at that point, and we decided that this was the way to go, and that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And so we spend a lot of money on really old machinery. Most of our machines are close to 100 years old. And we've tried to do everything that we do with zero compromise.
Do you still have the Death Star roaster?
We do still have the Death Star roaster.
Okay.
And it's still doing its thing. It's pretty impressive.
No kidding.
So.
No kidding. If you haven't seen it, it's huge. It looks like a huge Death Star.
Yeah, we can roast 3 bags of cocoa at a time if we.
So
really
how many pounds?
It.
How many pounds is that approximately?
You're talking 3. That's like 210 kilos.
210 kilos. Wow.
So that's like
quite a bit.
50 pounds, something like that.
That's quite a bit.
I usually just do 2 bags, but so that'd be 140 kilos.
Wow.
So
So let's ask Benjamin and Aaron also about how you got started as far as your equipment, and what was your process getting started with equipment? Because we know that Art did this for a while, and then he went out and got the biggest equipment he could possibly find. And so Aaron, Ben, what's your story on how you got started with equipment and how you started making the bean to bar chocolate?
Well, first of all, I have to say Art has probably one of the most beautiful winnowers I've ever seen. I know he's been rebuilding a new one, even more beautiful. But I hope, Art, you'll show people your winnower, because it is a piece of artwork as far as I'm concerned. When I started in 2008, I started with the same way that everybody else at the time basically was starting, which was the equipment from Chocolate Alchemy. And so the joke I used to always have is when people would say, oh, it's great you do bean to bar chocolate, I would say, actually, I'm fixing machines and sometimes I have chocolate. And that was really the experience for a lot of chocolate makers at the time, the very early pioneers. And so I was very frustrated because I would like to do other things rather than fix machines. I'd like to make chocolate. And so I started working with one of the engineers behind one of the best machines that I'd ever worked with at that point in time, at saying, hey, can we work together to create a better machine? And that has been a great experience. I've been selling machines and getting people started all around the world making chocolate based on those machines. But at the same time in Belize, before I started working with the engineer I work with, we had a fire. And if it had not been for somebody coming to work early and shutting off all of the power to the factory in Belize, we would have lost everything. And that's an experience of other chocolate makers that I knew. So when I was working on equipment, on this new equipment, I knew that the design was different and I knew it had not been a problem. But one of the things that I wanted was an automatic heat shutoff, because I never wanted to sell a machine to somebody with a fear that this machine that often runs for 72 hours would cause a fire and have a similar problem like I had. So one of the very important things for me was making sure that it was a safe machine to use, that there wouldn't be the fire issues, that it was also affordable. I sell a $260 machine, and that price point's really important to me because I work with farmers around the world, and I find that the sooner a farmer can taste their chocolate, the better those beans become, because they understand the importance of genetics and fermentation and drying and all the important things that chocolate makers rely on for great tasting beans to make great tasting chocolate. So being able to help farmers internationally start to make chocolate, have a industry within the country and keep more of the money in the country and higher price for beans have all been things that the machines that I work with have allowed me to have those other parts of my passion fulfilled as well. And then I'll just say another thing on equipment, and that's my winnower. They say that complaining never pays off, except for my winnower. And that's because I was talking to John Nancy, visiting him on a road trip, and complaining that there weren't any good winnowers out there, that you could spend a little bit of money, you could make your own, or you could pay a lot of money, and none of them were good. And so when I next talked to him, the first thing he said was, I'm over the moon. And I was one of the first beta testers of the other winnower from John Nancy that I now use to this day. So
that's great.
Every now and then the squeaky wheel does get the grease.
That's great. And Ben, how about you? How did you start out with equipment, and what are you using now?
First, I want to thank Aaron. Thank you, because we also got our winner from John Nancy.
Yes.
And it's amazing, and it's 10% of the cost of a commercial winnower. So, yeah. For me, so I didn't have a physics degree, and I wasn't mechanically focused like Aaron. So I was I had a little different approach, which was, I started making chocolate in our home kitchen. So did a lot of research online, was on all the forums and chocolate maker board discussion groups, and saw that there's other, artisanal chocolate maker, small scale equipment available. So I just, I bought some from Cocoa Town originally. I think I had one of their small grinders to start. I bought some from Diamond Custom Machines, and
Up, you're freezing up there.
A couple
Ben,
other.
oh, did everybody freeze? Ah, there you are. Okay, my screen froze. It must be everybody froze. I thought it was just you for a moment.
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Cool.
Keep going.
So what I quickly learned is that with machinery and equipment, if you're not really mechanically inclined, that I found myself on the phone a lot with customer support, right? Like, this belt broke, and why is it smoking, and this gets stuck. And so after about a year or two of making chocolate on small equipment at home, I found that there are some companies that have really great, customer support, and some that don't, and some that have good customer support that's basically free, and some where the customer support is really expensive. Like, if you break some small piece on a machine, you don't want to pay a third of the price of the machine to replace it, because things break all the time. So my approach is really to sort of, at some point I realized that I didn't want to think of these, of my vendors and the equipment suppliers as partners. I would send them our creations in the early phases, like include them in the process, thank them, and the sort of cream rose to the top, so that by the time we moved into our facility, we bought some, we have some 100-pound grinders. We're still using the winnower from Chocolate Alchemy. Cocoa Town has a great commercial roaster that we've been working with. One of the dials kind of melted because you run it really hot, but it works like a charm. And we really like Diamond Custom Machines and their large grinders. They don't have oil. They don't require oil changes. Really reliable. And whenever we have a problem, I just get on WhatsApp and talk to the owner, and he's really responsive. So that's kind of been our approach, is just, it's not just the machine you're buying, it's the team that stands behind it, and the service and the troubleshooting and the curiosity, and that, I want to, the good chocolate, we need to align ourselves with vendors and partners that are really mission focused and want to grow and succeed and help each other. And sometimes that means you got to do things for free to make things work. And that's the approach we take with our customers, and we really appreciate it when our vendors do that for us.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Actually, Bhavani, the owner of Diamond Custom Machines, is that engineer that I'm working with. That's why Indi Chocolate sells Premier and Diamond Custom Machines, is because we only work with partners that stand behind what they produce, because it's the ethos that we work from as well.
Go Bhavani. I have videos of him in our back patio with like stone dust flying out of our grinder because we were regrinding it to fix it. And so, yeah, he really rolls his sleeves up.
He does. We've got a lot of fun stories about just the crazy things Bhavani will do for customer service. So we love working with him. Yeah.
That's great. So I want to shift the conversation just a little bit and ask you about your origins, and how do you choose your origins? What's in it? What's behind your thought process, and you're going forward with that? And Art still looks like he's fixing machine there.
Oh, I'm always fixing machines. I just mute myself so that you guys don't have to hear it.
Very good.
We want to see some pictures, Art.
Well, we can show you a quick factory tour here.
Show them the winnower.
Here's our big melanger.
Wow.
Let's see if we can. Each stone weighs like 1,500 pounds. And then we got our small one. The stone weighs like 300 pounds.
Gorgeous.
And then we got our roller mill. And then we got a pet salt conch. And I'll show you the roaster here in a second.
Death Star?
Yeah. So it's in a completely separate room. We have to go outside the factory and come back in, or go between rooms, because I didn't want to have any chance of any dust from the beans getting into the finished product, because the dust would be unroasted, and that could you know, cherry nasties. So we have a semi-newer winnower that we got from Steve DeVries recently. And then this is our old winnower, which I have to rebuild. We actually had a fire last August 28th, so just a little bit over a year ago. And so our beautiful old winnower is toast in more ways than one.
Wow, that is enormous.
And where's the Death Star?
Oh, the Death Star. So right here.
There you go.
Wow, gorgeous.
So Art, tell us, since we're
Yeah.
still on you, tell us, how do you choose your origins?
How do I choose the origins? It's entirely flavor driven. I look for beans that I can get on a consistent basis that have absolutely beautiful flavor. And I just taste the raw beans and go from how the beans taste raw. And I've got enough experience under my belt that generally I know, you know, from how they taste raw to what it'll taste like roasted. And then I'll do a whole series of, I'll get, you know, I'll usually buy a bag to start with, and then do a whole series of different test roasts. Just try to find the spot where the cocoa really sings. And if I like the result of that, then I'll order a whole bunch of it. Usually we don't do anything unless we're doing like a full ton
You
at
said
a time.
you need it on a consistent basis. What's a consistent basis to you? Is that once a year? Is that a couple times a year? Are you getting every harvest?
When I come back to them, that they know enough about what they're doing that I can get more of it. Because
Okay,
it's pretty frequent, like you end up with farmers that end up with spectacular beans, but they really don't know why they're spectacular or what they did to get it there. And so then you go back and try to get more of it, and then they'll sell you more beans, but they're not spectacular anymore. And a lot of that goes back to the fact that cocoa is just a trade good for them. You know, you got somebody from the other side of the world that's come to their little farm and they buy stuff, and then, you know, they don't necessarily see finished product made from their beans. And which is bad, actually. So we always try to take finished chocolate back to the farmers we work with.
That's great. And Ben, how about you? How do you choose your origins?
We primarily, I mean, flavor is the primary way. We use a blend of beans because we're making zero sugar chocolate, and we're using sweeteners that are, even though they're all erythritol, mesquite powder, and stevia ours are organically sourced and found in Mother Nature. They're not sugar, so they don't have the same sweetness intensity or sweetness profile, so they interact with bean flavors differently. And so we aim for a complex chocolate flavor that's really delicious, chocolatey, kind of fudgy, but we want the complexity of you know, more acidity and citrus and some of the kind of olive flavors that can come in with you know, Criollo kind of beans. So we usually are using a blend of Trinitario, Forastero, and Criollo. And it was really trial and error. I mean, so we've come up with our dark chocolate is a kind of signature flavor that we aim for. I totally share Art's and probably Aaron's pain, which is sometimes you find a bean in a great, you know, from a distributor or a farm, and, you know, and next year you want to buy it and it's gone, or they forgot to do something and it's not organic certified, or so with Bean to Bar, keeping a supply chain from the bean source that's really healthy and reliable is challenging. I mean, just a quick story, you know, we found a really nice bean that came from a a farm from a country in Africa that is they're doing all the right things as far as sustainability, as far as providing like like a fair market price for the farmers. And the bean was relatively inexpensive and it was really high quality, but we were the first customer for our distributor to use it because the people didn't want to buy from Africa because it sometimes the tenant farming and other ethical practices are kind of below what is typically an ethical sourcing standard. So we gave the bean a try. It was great, and about 6 months later, the bean price went up about 40% because everybody else was using the bean also. So that's sort of like. So one initiative that we're doing this year is we're looking at farms that are more, have more vertical integration in the sense that, there's farmers and co-ops that have a distributor in the US so that they're more tightly linked and they can better control supply and demand, especially if they build a relationship with a larger, a medium-sized, larger-sized chocolate bean to bar chocolate company. They can, the farmers can count on us buying beans, and they can, plant more and take care of their trees more. So, it's a learning process to find, really good suppliers that have high ethical sourcing standards and that have the flavors that we need on a consistent basis.
And Erin, how about you? How do you choose your cacao and your flavors, and what's appealing to you?
Yeah, well, it does come down to taste. I mean, that's the end all be all ultimately that it has to come to. But I do taste a lot of beans on the farm. I look at and really evaluate that. I found that some of the baba, the sweet mucilage around the outside of the bean, can give some indications of what may be possible with that bean. And I really look at their fermentation and drying as well, because fermentation is a really important step in flavor development. And so I want to make sure that they have the ability to consistently ferment well. One of the things I also look for is that the fermentation is done above ground and that it's covered. And same with drying, because I like to say I don't really want the flavor of dogs, pigs, and chickens in my beans. And if you look at the way most beans are fermented and dried, it's a sad tale indeed. So I look for things like that really actually do ultimately impact flavor and consistency. It's not that it has to always be consistent, because it's like a great wine. There are going to be different seasons and different flavors, but I do want to see that they have the ability and the understanding to really maintain high standards, to keep those beans fresh and freer from pathogens than you might see otherwise. So those things all play into it. And also that, their kids are going to school. We've been working lately with Slave-Free Chocolate to really help make sure that people are using good practices, because there is child slavery in cacao, and we know that. And so that's something that I would like our entire industry to be out of, and that's something that Indi Chocolate's been working with Slave-Free Chocolate and some other organizations to really make sure that there are good practices, not just flavors, in our beans, because I think we talk a lot about sustainability, and I think that's a really important component of sustainability. And it's also really nice to work with organizations that are actually impacting the communities positively, like Enliven Cacao, where they not only, one trip I was there, they were bringing power up to the farms for the first time, and where one of the farms that finally got power had worked for the electric company for over 10 years and never been able to get electricity to his own farm, but through a working together collaboration was able to get power. And they just recently opened up a cafe, and they're making chocolate with a $260 chocolate refiner. I brought soccer balls and backpacks in my, laptops in my backpack on trips there and things like that. And to be able to see that through purchasing good cacao, you can actually help the communities you work with. So it's both taste as well as impact.
All right. So I have a question for all of you chocolate makers. we know that you make bean to bar chocolate, and not everybody understands what bean to bar chocolate is. So how do you, what are some of the challenges with that, and discussing that with potential customers? And how does the market react to the fact that you make bean to bar chocolate? How do you work with that? Who wants to start this one?
I will start that. I think one of the things that most people don't understand is, one, where chocolate comes from. It's an agricultural product, but also the amount of hard work that goes into it. I make all our chocolate in Pike Place Market in Seattle, and that is not a cheap place to pay rent or pay people to work. And so it is expensive. And there is a lot that artisan chocolate makers do to make the chocolate that we make. It's a lot of hard work. It's a joy and a passion for all of us, but it is also a lot of hard work. And I think Art hit it on the nail on the head, as far as that part of being a bean to bar chocolate maker, unfortunately, is dealing with a lot of machines and making sure that those are going. That's why I work with an engineer, is because that has traditionally been difficult. And as small businesses, we also face more challenges as far as smaller production. I mean, Art is definitely the largest throughput on his machines, and those are very expensive machines. But there are a lot of disadvantages of being a small company, being a small business, and working in small sizes. I think that it allows for really great flavors and wonderful things to come forth as far as the palate. But it is expensive to do it. It is hard work to do it. And I think that people sometimes look and say, well, why is this so expensive? And there are a lot of reasons, including the premiums that we're paying for our beans, because we're not using things like vanilla, soy lecithin, all these other cheapening milk solids, all these other things that really don't give you the true experience that you're looking for when you're really wanting to be satisfied by chocolate.
Good answer. And I've been to your shop, and it's so transparent, because you have these huge glass windows that look through to the process. And so it's very easy for people to see the entire process while they're there in your shop. Ben, Art, you want to tackle that and tell us how you work with people, and when they react to what's bean to bar, and how to differentiate yourself from bulk market chocolate?
Yeah, well, it's always interesting, because I still get tons of people when they hear that I have a chocolate factory. They are always, so like, where do you buy your chocolate from? I'm just like, no, you don't get it. Yeah, I'm like, we buy the beans. I go down, I work with the farmers, I stay at their houses, we make sure it's done right, then we bring it back, and then we make the chocolate. And then all of a sudden, there's a look of wonderment in their eyes. But it's still pretty rough to get through to people that, that it's all done artisanally and with an eye towards quality. And there's no way that a large company could actually do what we're doing, just because of the way their machines are configured, and like a really good farm that's like, doing really high volumes might only be like 125 tons. And then, or that'd be from like maybe a small community. And then a large chocolate company would eat that up, in a couple days.
Right.
So there's all sorts of sourcing problems that they have in order to be able to do what we do.
True.
So it's tough to get the consumer to understand that it's what we're doing is actually, skimming the cream off the cream, and trying to do something really extra special.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to what Aaron and Art have already said. I would just say that it's educating, that there's a balance between wanting to educate and share our team's passion for making bean to bar. We need to balance that with the cost of getting the word out, and are we going to really convert, are we trying to convert people to bean to bar, or so we run into the same challenge with zero sugar chocolate. Some people love, when I'd be out in stores offering, sampling zero sugar chocolate, and I've had a few people just look at me and say, I love sugar, so, you're crazy, what are you doing here? And I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, the first couple of times that happened, I got really offended because I'm like, oh, but you just have to understand that everybody, everyone has a right to their preferences. And I think that for us, it's really hard to explain bean to bar because it's an experience. It's the flavor, it's the quality, and I think we have learned that we need to trust that customers, when they try bean to bar, they really know the difference, and we hear that, with feedback, and that's great. And even then, not all of our customers who buy the good chocolate or who are bean to bar lovers will tell us, hey, thank you for making bean to bar chocolate, right? I mean, it just doesn't. But there's always going to be a room for quality in any field, whether it's any kind of food, chocolate, cars, you name it. And I think in another way that we try to share the experience, we do before COVID, we've been doing a lot of factory tours, and Airbnb experiences became a really hot platform for us. We were doing jazz, and where we bring in jazz musicians from the community, have a jazz show, and then do a chocolate making tour where everyone get to make a couple of bars and take it home. And that was really fun because when people get that hands-on experience and they see the machines, it's really, really exciting, and it comes alive. So that's another way we're working this year to make Bean to Bar come alive. We have a jazz and chocolate event this weekend where we're going to do it all virtually, and we have other, we're trying to do more with video. I think now, the age of video, we can really communicate, with well done video, we can communicate and show the process, which can bring it home a little bit closer for all of our customers and people who are chocolate lovers and want to see more and learn more.
Thank you. Thank you. That'll be interesting to see how do you make a virtual bean to bar chocolate bar. Anyway, I'll be watching to see how that's done. So you touched on something about, and you and Aaron both touched on something here with COVID right now going on. That's got to impact some of the hardest parts, of being a bean to bar maker in a small business and things like that. So what are some of the hardest parts, especially right now for you? And then I have then can you tell us, are you working on anything special, any R&D that you want to tell us about? But focus right now on what are some of the hardest parts, especially from COVID. How have things changed for you? You said you can't do these jazz events and you can't have factory tours anymore. What's changed, and how can you get your message out? What are you doing to still, maintain your business and get your message out during this time?
Great. Yeah, great question. So just, I know COVID hit, and the biggest impact, immediate impact, was everybody staying at home. No one's coming by we have a small retail area.
Not long.
No one's coming. So that.
So you.
Oops. Hey, Art.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. And then the second thing we saw was that slowly the grocery, for us, we sell a lot of chocolate in specialty grocery and natural grocery stores, organic grocers, markets, everything sort of for us right below the size of Whole Food. And I think grocery sales are down, especially for chocolate and more sort of luxury goods. I think that's just because people are spending I spend half my time now going to the grocery store waiting in line, either to get in or at the checkout. And there's also now a fear component instead of a excitement component of, oh, I'm in the grocery store, where's the free sample? Let me go do some discovery and get something new. Now it's like, let me get out of here as quickly as I can. So we've seen the grocery come down. Online has, of course, gone up because where everyone's at home and wanting some treats and to be more safe and have things more convenient and spend less time in lines. So that's sort of the new normal. And what a couple of things that we're working on is developing some better video content that we can use for online, for Facebook, and on Amazon now has video ads. We can really stick out and just get people's attention and say, here we are. We're also developing some new sizes and formats that are more e-commerce friendly. So on Amazon, people are more willing to spend $15. I don't know, you've got a bunch of people who do shopping just like us on the call today. I mean, when I'm in a grocery store, I'll spend $5, $6, $7, $8 on a chocolate bar. But when I go to Amazon, I might spend $15 on a pack, something bigger. So our bars and squares are more oriented to the brick and mortar world. So we're developing a smaller, kind of a middle-sized bar that we can put into a bag and sell those on Amazon at a lower price point, so that we can encourage people to buy and try. And we have a couple new flavors coming out for the holiday. We're working with a secret collaborator who will be revealed in November, who's helping us with a really cool recipe that's pretty new on the market, and we're really excited to announce that.
Okay, secret to be revealed in November. Art, Aaron, what are you working on now? What's your biggest change in business since COVID started?
Do you want to go first, Art?
Oh, geez. Yeah, well, a number of our customers have all had various financial problems because of COVID. Yeah, and so that's made life a little bit more interesting than I'd like. So we're kind of working through that. And then, but initially, my thought was, oh, this is great. I can get all cut up. Because we were just trying to get into a new space with a chocolate chip depositing line. And
So
there's
how's that going? Do you have chocolate chips yet?
Yeah, we do. We're
Okay.
it's just starting to be decent production on that. There's still a few
Do you
things
still make your wafers, your baking wafers?
Yeah, and this is so that we can do those in like large quantities without it being as much of a pain in the rear as our old ones were. Because our old machine never liked to cooperate because it was kind of jerry-rigged. So the new machine seems to be working pretty good. The temper is not quite as great as I'd like, but sooner or later I'll get that figured out. But I spent most of the early part of COVID just building out the new space, and on that front it didn't really affect me a whole lot because, well, I never really see anybody at work anyway. so other than the few times I would run to Home Depot or what have you, it was kind of business as usual for a good chunk of the time, because most of my business is done either by phone or email or what have you, or I'm just out on the production floor, usually by myself or one or two other workers. So
we look forward to
so
seeing some of those chocolate chips.
We were self-isolating before it was a fad. So I'm actually hoping that someday that I'll have a social life.
Well, I would have to say I echo with Ben, as most of you probably know or remember, that Seattle was one of the very early first hit of COVID in the United States. And so we saw the impact very, very early. And being in Seattle's iconic Pike Place Market, where generally April 1st, we would have had cruise ships starting in port in Seattle that going through October. As you can imagine, that really impacts a destination. And so it's been a really big adjustment as far as what we're seeing, as far as number of people coming in through the door, which would normally be, because of the beautiful Seattle summers, would generally be our high season right now. And so we've definitely seen a shift because of COVID. We have been able to switch around our store. We've been able to keep open the entire time, and we're extremely thankful for our loyal customers that have continued to come in. We miss seeing as many tourists as we normally would at this point in time. We are seeing some, and thankfully they're wearing masks. We're very appreciative of that. We have changed around our store quite a bit so that we are able to socially distance and help our customers at the same time. For us, that was even more of a challenge because we have things like spice rubs, which use our cacao, or teas that have our cacao, or lotions and soaps. So that's been an adjustment for us to be able to help our customers in that way. We've seen, thankfully, also an increase in online sales. We're really appreciative of that. We've also adjusted, so we're now on DoorDash. We do curbside pickup. So we've adjusted in the ways that COVID have required us to adjust. And we really appreciate the direct sales of people. That's really where we've always tried to be direct to consumers. But the other thing that I've seen as far as the industry is when people aren't buying artisan chocolate in the quantities that they have in the past, that impacts the supply chain and the farmers. So a project that I've been working on for quite a while now is, because I sell the machines, I have people ask me for small quantities of beans to make chocolate at home, or if they're just starting out their own company. And it hasn't made sense for Indi Chocolate to do a lot of this because that's kind of expensive for us to do that sort of thing. So I've actually been working with a number of farmers for a while now to try and get a program down where they can actually ship the beans for us. And so that's actually something that we hope to be able to announce pretty soon and have to offer, because we've also shifted. We generally do a lot of classes in person, a lot of events. We have what we call our gathering space, which is really right now the worst term ever to use for a space, but we generally do things, everything from, we've done opera and chocolate, where an opera singer sings different arias for different pieces of chocolate, or La Vie en Rose for our rose lotion, really fun kind of collaborative ways, and lots of events and classes. So we've had to shift from that to doing virtual. So now we have a virtual chocolate making class. Our next one's coming up September 27th, where we send you the machine and we send you all of the ingredients. We check in with you before the class to make sure you've got everything and everything's ready to go. And then we have a Zoom class, which is actually really fun, and everybody starts their first batch of chocolate together. And that's been a really fun experience, because my husband and I do most of the teaching, and we love to teach people about chocolate, and we love to get people starting to make chocolate. So it's been really fun to be able to continue that in COVID in a different virtual way, but we've had a lot of fun with that. So we're looking for doing more of those classes, and also bringing on more farmers' beans online so that they're not as negatively impacted by COVID, and that people get delicious beans to make chocolate with at home or start their companies with as well.
That's fantastic. That's a new twist for you.
It is. Well, we've been teaching these classes in person for a long time, and we've had people internationally ask us for these classes for a long time. I do some consulting, getting other businesses Bar Chocolate companies started and things like that. But this was a COVID kind of called this forth. So
it did, and there's so many different areas of communication, technology, things like that have been pushed forward because of COVID. And I'm actually very thankful for those areas that we've been able to explore and take hold of and start using on a regular basis, such as these types of calls. These Zoom meetings are great. So
and the stock of Zoom is like totally taking off.
Oh, I know. Should have bought that a long time ago, right? So
I've been using Zoom for 8 years because my business partner Mickey in the chocolate is based in another country, so we've been on Zoom for 8 years, and we're just kicking ourselves because it was clear that Zoom was way better than Skype 8 years ago. So anyway, we're gonna have to wait for the next trend.
Yep, we're going to have to, be visionaries and see those next trends. So on that note, do you have any advice, any of you have any advice for new aspiring bean to bar chocolate makers that might be thinking of starting to make chocolate, especially right now?
Who wants to start?
I'll,
Go do something, find something else.
Art, isn't that your quote? How do you lose a lot of money in chocolate or something? Is there something like that you said?
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty accurate, right? How to make a small fortune in chocolate is start with a big one.
Just like wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say I'll on the more I'll start with the more just to be optimistic. I think that there's always going to be room for start. I think it's good to start small. I mean, there's just a lot of machinery. You can get everything you need to actually make bean to bar chocolate now, like in your kitchen, and so the capital investments is very low. And there's with digital printing, with the ability to create an online store, you can get some nice little packaging. It's easy to try things out. So I think if I encourage people, if they have if they have an idea that they're excited about, and they have the time and a little money to invest, it's a great time and way to get started and get it in people's mouths, and get feedback quickly, and try and go to some stores that are around town that and just go give some samples, let them try it, just give it a shot. And I think to start to build, building a business there's a lot of death traps as you grow, because you have to you have to take a bigger risk to go from the home to a factory, to expand your factory, to go into more kinds of chocolate, that like with Aaron, to have a retail store. And there's a lot of risk. It doesn't, just because you come up with something that tastes good doesn't mean, so this is more, I think, to Art's warning, which is if you have something that tastes good, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to make a business out of it. And it has to be something that is relatively unique. It has to be something that you can replicate at scale. And you're gonna, we've had to continually innovate and come up with different flavors or formats and ways of selling. And so I think if someone's really passionate, now's a great time, because it's really cheap to find out if you can make something that people like. And if you get excited about people's reactions to your product, then run with it, because I guarantee you in 3 or 4 years, you're gonna, if not making a lot of money, you won't be losing it. And you're gonna be doing something a little different than what you thought, because you're bringing that passion to solving problems. And so that's my optimistic advice.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks. Aaron, advice?
Yeah, I would say I really agree with Ben, is start small. Like, make your mistakes when you're small. And that's when we teach chocolate making, we try to give people the freedom to try, also the freedom to make something bad, so okay, I've burnt beans and I don't want to go there anymore. That's okay, because you've learned something. And if you're doing it on a small basis, you can course correct very quickly. I would also say one of the most important things you can have are not people that want to be your taste testers and are going to be positive about the experience. What you want are people that will be absolutely brutal and honest, because that's really, honest feedback is the best thing you can ask for. It's really how you make improvements. And so I think that it's really, really important. I call it my committee of no. If you know my products and know how great they are, it's because I had a lot of people go, well, I don't quite, and that's perfect. And that's really what I want to listen to more than accolades, because that's what I know makes something great. And the other thing I would say is, a lot of people are starting out, but a lot of things really are wonderful when you collaborate. And I think that that's the thing that I'm surprised to not see more of in the industry. I have a tea maker that I've worked with for many, many years now, that is phenomenal at what he does. And we worked for over 6 months developing the tea line for Indi Chocolate, where every week I would come back, I would come to him and say, well, I don't really like this on this batch. And so I was the party of no, but we really created something really wonderful together. And I would say that, if you don't always have to go out on your own, there's a lot to be said about collaborating. I collaborate with a local hot sauce maker that does a fermented hot sauce with our cacao, with a Salt Blade Meats in Seattle that does handcrafted artisan salamis with us. And so we collaborate with a lot of small businesses because they do what they do really, really well, so that we can have things that are just extraordinary and new ways for people to discover cacao and chocolate in ways that they really probably weren't thinking about. So for Father's Day, for example, we worked with Ghost Fish Brewery that is in Seattle and is a really great beer maker that does a gluten-free beer.
I was going to say, aren't they gluten-free? Yeah.
They are. So they did a beer with our cacao, and then we took that beer and we made truffles with it. We did a truffle with our hot sauce maker, with our spice rubs. And so we did this really kind of ways Dad likes to barbecue with our barbecue rubs, and truffles with these different kind of disparate elements and bringing them together in new and refreshing ways. And so, and also a salami stick in there. So we love that really fun collaboration. And I would say, don't always think that you have to do it out on your own. If you have an idea and you have somebody that you'd like to work with, consider that as well, because that's actually a way to harness your passion so that you don't get strung out on all the business decisions, which I think has been, especially with COVID, a big problem for a lot of people. And then the other thing I would say is, if you really want to support the artisan chocolate industry, buy directly from the makers and pay for postage. Because we all have to pay for postage, and it really helps us, because otherwise, even with what seems expensive postage from a lot of companies, we're eating at least some of that cost to make it a little bit more affordable. But that's something that I think all three of us would probably have the same thing to say, is that when you buy directly, it really goes to the people that you're wanting to help. So it's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Erin. We're straight up at 12 o'clock right now. I'm going to open it up to the chat to say, if you have questions directly for Erin, Ben, or Art, put those in chat right now. If you guys have a couple of minutes to hang out and answer those. If we don't have questions coming through, then we'll bid everybody adieu and say, until next time, go eat your chocolate. But any chat messages right now? I'm looking.
Yeah, please ask questions if you have them. I'm definitely here for questions.
I know that there have been some answered in the chat as we've gone through. I'll kind of look at some of those. There were questions about who carries your products, and Erin, of course, you're direct only. And not seeing too many come through. People are talking about the erythritol. Somebody is asking for Erin Andrews, what machines are offered?
Diamond Custom Machines and Premier.
Diamond and Premier?
That's what I work with, yeah.
Okay. And I'm not seeing any. Oh, here we go. Somebody said this is fascinating. Thank you. We'll buy direct. Great. People are thanks for a great session. Happy to know more about Bean to Bar. I'm always thrilled when people want to know more about Bean to Bar. That's of course, my passion, and love teaching and finding more people to indoctrinate into the Bean to Bar way of eating.
So Indi is my daughter, and with my kids, I taught them very early on, when somebody says they make chocolate, this is to Art's point, when somebody says they make chocolate, my kids always ask, where do you store your beans? Because that's the difference between a Bean to Bar chocolate maker and somebody who isn't.
Yes, that's a good question.
I've had a lot of people that, make fudge during Christmas that say they're chocolate makers. And I think, well, that's not exactly the same definition that I would use for a chocolate maker. But
well, actually, I have a bit of a funny story here.
Okay.
So when we were first getting going, I went down to the county health department for their, food safety class. And so then, to get my food safety permit for the first time. And while I'm doing that, then they do the part of the class, and then they get to the obligatory movie that's supposed to scare everybody about how you can kill everybody by what you're making if it's not done right. And so the teacher comes back, and he's and so I had some questions for him that we chatted a little bit during the movie, and he says, "So what are you doing?" I says, "Well, I'm setting up this chocolate factory. We're gonna make chocolate." And he's like, "Oh, well, my family, we make chocolate." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And then right then the movie ended. He went back up to the front of the class, and the whole rest of the time I'm just like in a pissy bad mood, like, "Oh, I bet you his grandma makes nut clusters, and the,
Not that that's bad.
holiday stuff, Rocky Road or something, And so, I've got a little bit of a cynical view of life at times, which, actually makes life a little bit more interesting. But anyways, the class ends, I get my certificate. I'm about ready to walk out the door, and I say, "Well, I should, great thing about being a cynic is finding out how often you're right." So I walk back, and I'm like, "So you say your family makes chocolate, huh?" He says, "Yeah, I'm a Tobler." As in Toblerone.
Right.
And so, yeah, his family actually did make chocolate.
Very good. Very good. So we've got some other questions here asking about uneven score lines and why each piece is uneven or even or uneven. And Erin answered that, saying sometimes people want more, sometimes they want less, and sometimes they want to share, sometimes they don't. I know I have bars that I share, and then I have a few that I just don't share.
I love to see happily married older couples that are both chocoholics. And it's hilarious because they'll both buy their own bars because they don't share with each other, but they're happily married. And, it seems like everything else is going right.
Part of a happy marriage.
Yes.
Part of a happy marriage. Somebody asked about palate training tips. I would say smell and taste everything and just try to remember those. That's my quickest and easiest tip on palate training. Just smell and slow down and taste everything, and then that helps. Any other questions out there? Toblerone has a new orange chocolate. Interesting. We've got a question about, can you talk about the changes of adding tea, fruit, and spices and how best to balance those?
I would say, because we've used our chai and done chai bars, our chai tea that we use. It really depends. Like it's looking at what ingredients you're bringing together, but also the bean that you're using for that bar is so important as far as what the nuances are, and do those flavors but blend well with that origin. And so I think that you really have to take them apart separately and then really find the best place to match.
So it all comes back to flavor. I mean, each one of you have mentioned everything comes back to flavor. The flavor of the beans that you're using to make your bars. When you're blending, you use you're looking at flavor. Erin, Ben, you mentioned that the flavors of the sweeteners that you're using are quite a bit different than sugar. So that comes back to how does that blend with the flavor that you're making. Any other comments on blending ingredients in there, different inclusions?
I think it's important to trust your palate and test things out, and then when you like something, share with others that have a similar curiosity and interest and passion for flavor. And the security guard at my gym had an amazing palate, and he gives really honest feedback. There's no BS. Not like, "Oh, this is so wonderful, I'm happy you're doing," it's like, "No, this is terrible. Like, I don't like the taste." So it's good to trust your own palate, but also verify and share with others, and make it fun, and you'll find something new and wonderful.
Yeah,
Right.
I think as much as, we are all very serious and professional about making chocolate, I think that one of the great things about chocolate is it's boundless, it's playful, it's exciting, and you can innovate. And I think that one of the great things I love about the artisan community is when we get together, we're always sharing something new. And there are just so many great things that people are bringing to the table. There's so many new ideas. And I think that that's one of the really amazing things about the artisan chocolate community, is that there are these just great things. We're continuing to expand the dialogue of chocolate. And there's some great stuff out there.
There is. Very last question from our chat. Some of the chocolates that I've had are super smooth, while some are coarser and you can see the sugar crystals. Is it because of the bean or the grinder, or preference? I'll let you answer that. I know I have
I don't
my
know
answers on
which
this
chocolate, but it's probably a combination. Hopefully it was created by design. So if you grind chocolate for less time, then the molecular size of the cocoa beans or the sweetener or both will be bigger, and you'll be able to feel them. And typically you grind cacao beans first to make a chocolate liqueur, and then add the sweetener. So it could be that there's some Mexican chocolate that is very granular, and that's by design. It's a traditional recipe that probably originated in the fact that there wasn't a lot of power available, and they did a lot of hand grinding, and that's just a genre of chocolate. So it's probably preference, and you can moderate the degree to which you make the chocolate molecular size small enough so that it is indistinguishable to the tongue whether it's a liquid or not.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Other
I would say
comments?
that hopefully, I agree, Ben. Hopefully it's by choice. Sometimes it might be by accident. I'm not certain with different makers, but hopefully it is by choice. And it can also be impacted by things like bloom that will impact the way, the texture with which you perceive the chocolate. But the other thing too is actually, I do consulting to other companies because I sell machines and all these other things. And there was somebody that was making a hot chocolate, and they were going through all of the pieces of really grinding down their sugar to not have a mouthfeel when you're eating it as the chocolate part of it. But it was meant to be as a liquid, as it was Mexican chocolate initially. And so the thing about it was they were spending a lot of time and power to grind down sugar that is dissolving in a hot liquid. And so they wound up saving themselves a lot of money and capacity, and were able to create a product which their end result was the same either way. And so sometimes that if it's going to be a drink is purposely left, especially if it's just the sugar particles, to be a little bit larger because they're going to dissolve in the liquid.
Good. Anything to add, Art?
Well, it can also be a creative thing. I mean, our raspberry rose and our cardamom black pepper both have larger sugar crystals in it by design, because it adds a nice little crunch to it. So, but I think going back to advice for people that are starting out too, because it is possible that the bars that the questioner was talking about wasn't done on purpose. One of the things I see in the industry, which is a little bit worrisome, is people run out, they buy this equipment, they're like, okay, now it's time for me to start a business. And really what they need to do is learn your craft first and then start a business. And so that's really important. And because if you roll product out before you have honed your craft, you step all over your own reputation. So
Very true.
It's really important to learn your craft before you start, and then you can have the skills to be able to draw upon as you move forward. Otherwise, you're just experimenting on people, and it ends up really hurting people's reputations,
Thank you,
as
Art.
well as hurting the reputation of the craft movement itself.
True. True. Thank you, Art. Well, thank you everyone for your time and your energy in putting into this. You can see this again and watch it again in a few hours. It'll be posted on chocolatechelevision.com, and it will also be on Chocolate Salon Facebook page in just a few hours. So thank you again. Go make some fantastic chocolate.
And thank you, Barbie, for hosting and moderating and engaging everybody. It's been a great time. And Aaron, Art, nice to be with you here.
Yeah,
thank you.
Well, likewise.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Barbie. Thank you, TasteTV.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone and be in such a company of great chocolate makers. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we'll see you.